So hi, Stefania. Are we ready to start now?
I share. Can you
Okay,
see me?
perfect. Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
You want to start now for the webinar? Cause
Yep,
Yes.
I'm
yes,
ready when
cause
you are.
yes. So ready when you are.
Just a minute. This one. Okay. Okay, I'm ready. Go. Hello. Can you hear me?
So
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Stefania Altieri, and I am an Etwinning group moderator. My group is called Coding at Schools. We have today a very important guest, a special guest. Professor Alessandro Boiolo from University of Urbino, the Italian Code Week ambassador and the Europe Code Week coordinator. First of all, I would like to thank you to be
My
here.
pleasure.
Etwinning as a new record today. 250 places gone in few minutes to take part in this event. Compliments for your job, Alessandro, and your inspiration for all of
Thank
us.
you. I appreciate.
Before
Actually,
starting,
my
I
job
would
is
like to
nothing without
invite
yours.
you, all the participants. Thank you very much. I would like to invite all the participants to write questions in the chat space. I will ask Alessandro to answer at the end of my interview. Moreover, we will launch some polls during the interview, and all the participants can write their opinion in the polls. Okay, now we can start. Our today's reflection starts from the current shortage of technology skills in the fields of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In the job market, there are not enough people who possess the computer skill needed to convey development and innovation. In any workplace, not exclusively in ICT. Among computer skills, programming is the most outstanding and most valued by employers. Studies and careers in the field of information technology, as well as in any scientific field, are dominated by males as a result of gender stereotypes that creates also a gender gap. A generational gap also emerges between teachers and students in the field of technology. Teachers are often uncomfortable teaching their students the use of tools they aren't familiar with. And this problem is moreover twofold. On one side, we have the gap between digital and non-digital natives, and on the other hand, the acceleration of innovation. So, Alessandro, what do you think about these gaps? How
Okay.
can we face this situation, and which are the key wins, key challenges, tangible ways in which we already see the sector changing, and hopes for future?
Okay. So thank you for the introduction and also for inviting me and for organizing this meeting and this webinar, and also for the questions, which are very well centered on the topic, and I think they are essential, and I very happy to try to answer some of them, even if the answers are not so trivial and probably also not so shared. So I will provide my view and my vision and possibly open the discussion at the end of your interview, because I'm keen in also answering other questions and possibly trying to figure out which are the opinions on these questions that you raised. So first of all, gaps. Well, I I like speaking about gaps because, in my opinion, we are in quite in good shape because we are quite uh, close to close the gaps. Let me try to explain why. So you mentioned at least two gaps. One is a generational gap, and the other one is a gender gap. And there is also a third gap, which is a skill gap, which means that the labor market is seeking professionals who are not enough or not professional enough to fill the open positions. So let me try to address the question one at a time by focusing on one gap at a time. So the first one is a generation gap that you mentioned, which is the gap between teachers and pupils. And this is very interesting because, in my opinion, this has much to do with the innovation rate. So I like to represent innovation as an exponential curve. Exponential law is a mathematical law, which means that, for instance, something doubles every certain time, certain amount of time. So let me give you an example. Imagine that there is something that today is 1, and after 1 day doubles. So tomorrow will be 2. The day after tomorrow will be 4, and then 8, and then 16, and then 32, and then 64, 128, and so on. So this is an exponential law. And dealing with exponential is very, very hard. So it is apparent that the innovation rate is increasing. And this means that innovation is actually an exponential law. So that the rate innovation increases is almost the same, but this means that the amount of innovation that in our lives we experience, for instance, double with respect to the one that was experienced by past generations. So if we think of something like that, I think that I try to draw a graph. Let me see if I can share it with you. So I should be able to do so. Let me see. Recently shared documents. No, this is not a document. This is not the entire screen. Uh, well, I can try to share the entire screen probably, or at least an application. Here it is. Okay. Can you see it? Uh, can you see a graph on your screen? Hello, could you please confirm that you see what I'm...
Yeah, it's coming. I think it's
Okay.
coming.
Yes, I can see the graph now.
Yeah, it's your screen. It's Adobe Connect. Yeah,
Okay,
here
good.
it is.
So you see this thin blue line here? This is an exponential curve. And now assume that what you see here as an interval on the x-axis represent generations, or for instance, represents time in a fuzzy way, so that the distance between two numbers that you see on the x-axis represents the amount of time that a teacher... Yeah, please.
Alessandro, could you
Oh,
make
yes.
it bigger?
Like
Could
this,
you
you
make
mean?
it
Yeah,
bigger?
unfortunately, I cannot magnify it. I can try. What about this? Is it bigger? Hello?
Mm,
No? So
not
let me
properly.
avoid sharing this so I can go back.
Okay, no, it's right the same.
Okay,
Okay,
can you see
okay,
it?
perfect.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
there
it's
is a
fine.
big latency. Okay, okay. So what I mean is
Yes,
that
it's fine.
if you look at the x-axis, please imagine that the distance between two numbers, for instance, between 8 and 9 or between 6 and 7, represent the active life of a teacher. So this means the number of years a teacher is teaching, actually. And the blue curve represents innovation, while the y-axis has numbers representing, for instance, the amount of innovation that a single person can deal with during his or her life. So what I mean is that there is a maximum amount of innovation, which is not properly quantified, but you can, I think, figure out what I mean, that one single person can really cope with during his or her life. So if innovation is accelerating over time, this means that in the past, which is the origin of this curve, innovation was so slow and the innovation rate was so low that we could cope with innovation and even not really consider it during our active life. So, for instance, teachers didn't have to try to adapt to innovation and to adapt their teaching practice. But nowadays, there is an increasing amount of innovation that each teacher has to experience and possibly adopt during his or her active life. So this means that the problem is increasingly challenging. But there is also something else about exponential laws. Assume that this red line here represents a technology you are familiar with and something that it is efficient enough that you can stay with it. And in this graph, this represents 1000. So at the beginning of this timeline, this is 1000 and the blue line is at 1. So 1 is nothing with respect to 1000. So this means that this new technology that is representing innovation in this graph is not really making any interest or challenge to your teaching practice, which is based on this steady and mature technology, which is represented by the red line. But then, after one generation, this has become 2. And after another generation, 4, and then 8, and then 16, and then 32, 64, 128, and so on. So this means that every generation it doubles. So the new technology or the innovation is growing very, very fast and faster and faster. And when it reaches, for instance, 256, which is this point here, you start looking at it, and it can be appreciated even from this height, which is 1000. But when you start noticing it, it suddenly becomes 500. And as soon as it gets to 500 and you start saying, well, this is a new technology, probably I need to also try to use it, it jumps to 1000 because it doubles every generation. And at this point that it starts really competing with the previous technology, you say, okay, now I can really consider to possibly adopt it. But at this time, when you start considering it, it jumps again, and it jumps to 2000s. So this means that exponential laws are very impressive because as soon as you start noticing them, they grow so fast that they pass you. So this is what happens with innovation. And if teachers pretend to adapt to such an innovation in their teaching practice following this rate, this is something that makes them crazy. So in my opinion, the generation gap has basically nothing to do with technology. So in my opinion, the teaching practice can take advantage of technology if and only if teachers feel comfortable with it. Teachers are not in charge of following and adopting any new technology because their core business is another one, which is represented by the green light in my graph. I represented it at a higher level because it is more important than technology, which is just an instrument. And this green line is representing their experience, their expertise on a specific subject and topic and so on. So this is what they are in charge of teaching, and the instruments are just instruments. So in my opinion, this is the right way in which technology and innovation has to be perceived when speaking about teaching practice at school. On the other hand, there are also other gaps, like for instance the gender gap. And for the gender gap, I think that the main problem is about stereotypes. And stereotypes can probably be, I would say, fighted or at least completely cancelled by just trying once again not to focus on technology, but rather on thinking. And coding gives us a great instrument in order to focus on what is called computational thinking rather than on computers. So computers are just the instruments that allows us to provide instructions to an ideal executor. But on the other hand, what really matters is our capability of conceiving a procedure to be possibly delegated to an ideal executor like a computer, a robot, or something like that. But coding provides a way of focusing on the algorithm which is behind the code that we are writing in order to make a machine able to execute a procedure. And once we relax the focus on technology, probably we end up engaging boys and girls exactly the same way. And there is also something else that I believe when coding is used in schools. In Italy, at least, but I think this is quite common, teachers are mostly females. So this means that if our teachers, the persons in charge of engaging their pupils with coding, this means that coding won't be perceived anymore as something which is just for boys, because are mainly women trying to involve their pupils in coding activities. And then there is a skill gap. And the skill gap, which is something that is right now a problem, but a problem that the school cannot face suddenly. So a solution adopted at school cannot make an immediate effect on the job market. So on the job market, we need to take actions that are specific and try to solve a problem that has to be faced now. And since right now we are speaking about school, what we have to think at is how to provide a systematic solutions to this problem. And probably teaching STEMs at school is the solution the medium and long-term solution, not the short-term solution that requires other actions that are taken in different sectors, not at school. Okay, let me close this window and stop sharing this because this is not useful anymore. So as for the gaps, I think that this is what I wanted to share with you. So basically, the three gaps that you mentioned are the ones that I addressed in a way that hopefully opens other questions and opinions that I would like to discuss with you after the interview. In the meantime, I was also looking at the poll. So
Yes.
what do you think is the most common gap? So most of you
Yes.
are concerned about computer skills. Okay. I would like to know if you perceive this skill gap as something affecting schools or something affecting the job market, so that school has to provide a solution or school is suffering from the gap. But I'm not the one in charge of making questions, but I'm supposed to provide answers. So please go ahead with your interview.
No, yes, no, you can do that. You can launch some polls if you want. Okay, let's now focus on schools. So, in Italian schools, IT has a subsidiary relevance, and students often graduate without having learned about it. Presently, programming is not only taught at school in specific IT professional institutions or, for example, in pilot projects. However, this trend has been changing. Although the computer skill gap is still problematic, Italy is taking an important step in introducing coding at schools in application of EU recommendations. This is evident in the agreement between Programma Il Futuro and Code.org, dating back to 2014, and in the coordination of your European Code Week, entrusted to Italy from 2015, held by you. And recently, the importance of the computational thinking, as you told, has been underlined also in the Italian national indications for the curriculum of kindergarten and primary school. So it's a matter of school. Can you tell us something about your experience in Europe Code Week and the European future goals in coding and the development of computational
First
thinking?
of all, as I mentioned, I think that coding is a key, and it's providing a great opportunity to everybody to start making use of computer programming and experiencing some very intuitive computer programming in order to develop computational thinking skills. So, for instance, Europe Code Week, that originally started as an awareness-raising campaign, has shifted from awareness-raising to a true literacy campaign. So coding is a new literacy. And that's the key for really understanding the importance of Code Week, of coding, and the importance of making coding at school. So since the very beginning in Italy, we tried to involve schools in initiatives like Europe Code Week and the Hour of Code. And this was done by contacting schools, by trying to have representatives in each school, so to try to have a teacher, at least one teacher per school, involved in Code Week, and taking care of trying to also spread the word within the school. But it also went through the agreement that you mentioned between the Ministry of Education, the Italian Ministry of Education, and Code.org to make an Italian portal which is like a mirror of the Code.org website, which has been developed starting in 2013 in the US to support similar campaigns. So this is very, very important because coding has been brought in schools in two main ways: by teachers as a grassroots initiative, and Europe Code Week is a grassroots initiative completely led, managed, and conducted by volunteers. And event organizers, like teachers, are volunteers. And also Code Week ambassadors are volunteers, and also the coordinator is a volunteer. So it's a grassroots movement. But on the other hand, it was and it is very, very important that the Italian Ministry of Education decided to sign this agreement with Code.org, not just because of Code.org, but because of the Italian Ministry of Education, because this provided an incredible legitimation without making any practical difference. But it is very, very important for a school to be legitimated to do something, and for a teacher to be legitimated to do something within school, at least during Code Week or during the Hour of Code. And why this is so important? Because once we agree, and I'm strongly convinced of this, that computational thinking and coding are worth being brought to anybody, the school is the only inclusive playground. And not only school as a place, but school as an institution, and in particular school during school hours. Because if we organize after-school activities, which are more than welcome, if we organize something outside schools, which is more than welcome again, we cannot succeed in involving all kids. While if we organize something at school during school hours, then we manage to get all the kids involved, regardless of their conditions or their willingness or their perception of the importance of what you are doing. This is something that is just part of school hours. And right now, Europe Code Week is definitely moving to this vision, and the importance of this approach is also testified by the great amount of participants from Italy. In last editions of Europe Code Week, half of participants were Italians. And this is not because Italians are different than other people, but just because the involvement of schools was much higher than in other countries. So right now, Commissioner Maria Gabriel has challenged the Code Week ambassadors to try to involve 50% of, at least 50% of European schools in Europe Code Week by 2020. Which is an incredibly challenging goal, but it is also a goal and a challenge that is worth being taken.
Yes. Let's hope well. Cross the fingers. Okay, let's end the poll. Look, 80% will participate to Code Week 2018. Yes, it's done. Okay, I am a teacher, as all the attenders of this meeting, and I have a direct experience on that, on what you were saying. I can see thousands of teachers from all parts of Italy and Europe bringing coding into our schools and introducing the basic concept of IT and programming in kindergarten, primary, and all the way to secondary schools. This helps to develop the students' computational thinking and provides them new opportunities for future. With more awareness, the new generation of students may choose to become programmers or not. Even if they choose not to, computational thinking gives students the ability to apply an algorithm approach anytime needed. About algorithms, I know that you have just launched a contest.
Sure.
Can you
With pleasure.
tell us more about that?
So the contest that I launched is very, very simple in principle, because basically I'm asking schools to try to make a video, a short video from 1 to 3 minutes, to try to explain an algorithm. So explaining an algorithm is not just that requires writing some code. Explaining an algorithm means trying to find an effective way for trying to explain to someone who has no computer science skills how the algorithm works. And for instance, this can be done with video, with a cartoon, with an animation, with something that shows an algorithm at work, but also by trying to sing a song or by writing a poetry related with the algorithm or in any other way. So what I try to do is to challenge schools to involve their kids in finding a creative way of explaining how an algorithm works. Because by doing so, you end up really understanding the importance of the algorithm and also the functioning of the algorithm and the rationale behind it. So that's the idea. And once again, the idea is not to focus on technology, rather to focus on computational thinking. And algorithms are the core of computational thinking because they are just the procedures, not their expressions on a specific formal language. So the language is very important to be effective in representing an algorithm in such a way that it can be really executed by a machine, but it is even more important to really understand how the algorithm works. And that's the focus of the contest.
Okay, thank you very much for that. As you were saying, coding at schools can help to break down the gender stereotypes because it's tested by both female and male, as you said, female teachers and male teachers. And it's not only considered as a technical matter or subject, it's linked to many topics and to simple activities. Code School is the motto of the last campaign because it's felt like a game and it can be a vehicle to develop soft skills as well. Women's Day is the perfect day. It's the perfect opportunity to talk and reflect about the stories of informatics and all the women that have changed the world with their accomplishments. March is the STEM month, and it has been a pretext to use digital learning tools and software for business, culture, art, and communication to contribute to the gender equality. Of course, school and education have, as you told, a key role in this process because everyone is involved and has the opportunity for knowledge and for a digital citizenship. We need to give pupils a variety of appealing tools to develop their skills and creativity. School has accepted the challenge, proposing new teaching approaches based on engagement and the sense to be a community of best practices. STEM is a curriculum based on the idea of educating students in 4 specific disciplines: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, in an interdisciplinary and applied approach, rather than teach the 4 disciplines as a separate and discrete subjects. STEM integrates them into a cohesive learning paradigm based on a real-world application. Why is focusing on children okay? Why STEM
Okay.
education is so crucial in your opinion?
So your question already provides some answers or at least some proper directions, and thank you for that. Yeah, in fact, and I
It's a
appreciate.
teacher's
And I
point
would
of
like
view.
also to underline that I'm a computer scientist. So I'm not a pedagogist. So I stay on my field and I don't pretend to teach you how to teach. But what I can say is that engagement is probably the key. And I have two strong opinions that come to my experience with teachers and from the many teaching experiences that I witnesses. Um, the first one is that coding and STEM in general provide great instruments for engaging pupils and making engaging teacher activities that can possibly be used as methodological frameworks also while teaching other topics. And the other one is that if we make use of coding and STEMs in general in such a methodological and transversal way, we end up reinforcing the computational thinking skills of pupils because they can experience coding and STEM at work. So what I mean is that let's focus on coding, which is something that makes it easier to make an example. If, for instance, I teach computer science as I usually do at university, and I need to make an example, this example is often not seen, not perceived by students as something that is really challenging them in that moment because it's not real. It's not a true problem that they need to face at that specific time. While if, while teaching other topics, I make use of coding tools that are so intuitive that allow me as a teacher of another topic and pupil as pupils to make use of it to try to address an issue that they are facing while studying another topic, so they end up probably better understanding that topic because this is up to the teacher to make a proper use of coding and to decide when applying coding to their teaching activity makes sense. But on the other hand, it also allows pupils to understand that with coding and with STEM, you can solve problems. You can achieve a deeper understanding of other aspects, like, for instance, the computational aspects of other topics, of the topics they are teaching, or of other problems that they are facing in their daily life. So that's why I think that STEM and coding can be used at school in such a transversal way. And this is also, there is also another practical and pragmatical reason for making such a transversal use of STEM, which is the lack of curricula, of specific curricula in many countries, like for instance in Italy. So I'd like to stress the fact that computer science and STEM are worth becoming part of curricula, at least at specific years at school. So I'm not entering into this difficult field because this entails decisions which are very hard to be taken and to need to be carefully evaluated before making any decision on that. But what I'm saying is that if coding, computer science, and STEM cannot find their place in curricula, it is very important that in the meantime teachers can become sufficiently aware of their importance and their potentials to try to propose to their pupils to make use of them, coding and STEM in general, in their teaching activities, in their teaching practice, in order to allow them to develop their own awareness and to develop their own computational thinking skills that can then be also applied to a specific subject like computer science or robotics or engineering or mathematics, while in the meantime seeing and practicing this while it is considered to be fruitful by teachers.
Thank you very much. Very useful what you said. Now we
Okay.
hand the pool because we have a lot of answers. STEM education is very important in school. Success starts from critical thinking, problem solving skills, especially students to think multidirectionally STEM. It's the education of your future. STEM education is integration of complex study taught separately before. Teachers' engagement is the key. It's very important for students. I think it's absolutely necessary. It's definitely a necessary training development students. So everyone agrees. So important. Literature must be included, art must be included, the creative.
Okay, let me say something about
Empower
creativity.
learning.
So,
Good.
coding, I
Yes.
strongly believe that coding and computational thinking basically contribute to not only develop creativity, but in particular make it constructive. So what I mean is that coding is probably the fastest path to innovation, but also the fastest path to be followed to make your ideas come true. Because you can leverage the incredible potential of all the programmable objects that are around you. So if you manage to code, this means that you manage to provide instructions to programmable objects. And if you manage to make a programmable object do what you want it to do, this means that you need to fully understand the procedure that you want it to execute, because programmable objects have no free will at all, no intelligence at all, no creativity at all, not intuition at all. So this means that if you manage to make them do something, this is just because of you. So this has much to do with creativity, because writing a line of code means putting all your creativity in it, and also be so operatively creative that you make your idea come true, thanks to the automated execution that a machine can make based on what you wrote.
And you need to reflect on that to
And
give
you need
instructions to someone else.
Yeah. You need
So
to
this
become
is
fully
a good
aware of
thing
this
to do.
procedure much.
And
The
there was
degree of
an
awareness.
answer
Yeah,
that
the degree of
was saying
awareness
that
on a
you can do the
procedure that you
difference.
need to achieve in order to write a code for a computer or for a robot is much higher then the degree of awareness that you have by your own when you are directly executing the same procedure. Because if you need to delegate to someone else, you need to basically take care of all the details that you usually neglect when you think by yourself. And when you are trying to delegate a machine, an ideal executor, you need to put all your intelligence and creativity on it, on the code that you write, because everything is written in that code. And this is the only way that you have to make your ideas come true. So this means that the code that you write has all the potential of the execution and contains also the result of the execution. Because between the code and the result of the execution, there is just something that can be automatically performed. So this means without any additional creativity, any additional responsibility.
Yes, it's all in your hands because machine has
Yeah,
no
in fact.
creativity at all. Okay, not by chance. This seminar has been planned during the STEM Discovery Week. That is an international initiative to celebrate projects, organizations, and schools across Europe and around the world. The motto, Say Yes to STEM, describes the partners' open-minded and dedicated support to STEM subjects at school. Yes, we do. And we are proud of spreading our message out, together with Etwinning, the largest community of teachers in Europe. And being a Scientix ambassador, I can say that we are also helped by a great organization, such as Scientix, that promotes teaching materials from STEM research projects and supports Europe-wide collaboration among science and maths teachers, researchers, and other professionals in STEM education. We say yes to STEM, but we need to do it now. Why now? Can you explain why doing it now is so important for us?
Now is always the right time. Because whenever you, as a teacher, think that something is the right thing to be done, you need to do it now because you want to make it available to your pupils. Because for your pupils, the school is now. Tomorrow you will have new pupils. And for those new pupils, you will do something else or even the same, but always what you believe is right for them. So if you believe that for your pupils right now there is something which is good or which is needed, you need to make it available to them as soon as possible. And as soon as possible means now.
Okay, thank you. It's very important. We need to do that now. Before closing, before we go to the end, I would like to remind our participants that they will receive our certification tomorrow. And you can have all the materials of this webinar tomorrow as well. Now, we are at the end of this useful seminar, and I would like to thank Etwinning for this occasion, Assi, our coordinator, Onkanen. This is her surname, I hope to pronounce it well. And above all you, Alessandro, for your wisdom and energy. Thank you also to all the participants as well, and the ones that will watch this recorded video tomorrow or the following days.
Yes, please.
Do you want to say something else? Do you want to give some greetings
Yeah,
or
thank you.
something,
So first
you
of all, I would
can have
like
your
to
words.
announce the next edition of Europe Code Week that will cover 2 weeks from October the 6th to October the 21st. And it is very important that you, as teachers, take part in Code Week and try to engage your colleagues, because we strongly rely on Etwinning this year. Because, as I mentioned, in many countries, Europe Code Week is not involving schools. So Etwinning is a great opportunity for expanding the outreach of Europe Code Week in those countries where coding is probably already even adopted at school, but Europe Code Week is not so popular. I would like to say so popular as it is in other countries like Italy. But taking part in Code Week is not just a matter of making subcoding activities, but it also something that is worth in order to be part of something bigger. So if you do some coding and you know that there are millions of kids all around Europe doing coding exactly the same time, this adds thrill, engagement, sense of belonging to your experience. And those are all great feelings that probably add also to the learning experience. So please take part in Eurocode Week and take advantage of this, because any campaign, like for instance the STEM Week that Stefania mentioned, can work as an icebreaker for convince your colleagues to test something, to do something that can last for one day or possibly last forever. So please take advantage of any campaign, and in particular belong to this great community which is Etwinning, but which is also the community of all teachers involved in Europe Code Week. And thank you very much for whatever you will do, and for all the coding activities that you will propose to your pupils.
We have a group in Etwinning that's called Coding at Schools. In here you can find all the materials, suggestions, and all the things that you need to begin and even to go on. And we have also other projects in which we can share our experiences and ideas. So you can find in Etwinning a good occasion to begin with this in this field. And of course, I thank you, Alessandro, because you are the best, and your words are very important for us and very useful to begin this path, but also to go on, and with your inspiration and with your
Okay, thank you very much,
suggestions,
Stefania. I
we
really
can go
appreciate
further.
your work and also the way in which you manage this group, because I think that it is also very, very important for the success of Eurocode Week and for spreading coding all around Europe. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody, and see you soon.